at a wedding last month. He's a doctor, and he was so excited, showing me those Instagram reels of those tiny Japanese robots in shopping malls. I'm sure you know the ones, those cute little things called Pepper, the ones that greet customers and say, "You look tired today. Can I help?" They read your face, detect stress, and respond with programmed empathy. He had his mouth full of samosas and leaned in as if he was telling me a state secret. "Beta, do you know? Soon even robots will have as much empathy as humans." And I remember thinking, Uncle Ji, we're already there. Because here's the thing that no one tells you about healthcare. We're rushing to give machines the ability to care, whereas our humans have almost completely forgotten how to. Let me paint you the picture of any ward in an Indian hospital. Consider this a mockumentary, not your typical Netflix one, but one that would stream on, say, Doordarshan. Welcome to Indian healthcare. The primary indicator is the smell. Oh my God, the smell! It's this very specific cocktail, phenyl disinfectant, doing its very best to all that is completely given up someone's smuggled aloo parantha, chai from the canteen, and a single heroic agarbatti trying to fight it all but losing spectacularly. Every bed is surrounded by family members, but not just family, extended family, minimum 8 people per patient. An auntie is Googling symptoms on one hand while keeping WhatsApp open on another tab for the miracle cures from Canada. Beta, do you know? My friend's sister's husband's cousin tried this special treatment and got cured instantly. No cost, just show up. Two uncles are having this heated debate about whether the actual doctor sitting in front of them is right or whether the YouTube video they watched last night has the right answer. Spoiler alert, they think YouTube is right. 3 cousins on rotation for canteen duty. There's a whole system. They've got it organized. And the TV. There's always the TV playing some soap opera in which characters get shot, dramatically die, and reincarnate 10 minutes later looking completely fine. And somehow, those TV characters are still getting better continuity of care than half the people in the ward. Freeze this moment and you would think, wow, look at this infrastructure. Look at this activity. Look at all these people working hard. Well, it looks like it works, but all it takes is for someone to ask the simplest, most humane question. Doctor Saab, kitna time bacha hai? How much time is left? And the answer comes back. देखते हैं, report आ जाएगी, फिर देखते हैं. Let the report come, then we'll see. Most terminally ill patients have already stopped treatment at this point. The families aren't asking for impossible cures. They aren't asking for more treatment. But when you're in a hospital, the hospital does things to you. That is its only language. Action, intervention, more. But that is when I learned something that forever changed my perception of healthcare. The true measure of a health system isn't how long it keeps its people alive. It's how fully it lets them live when time is running out. But the story that changed everything, the one that I can't stop thinking about, takes place when I was 10 years old, sitting on a squeaky plastic chair in an oncology ward in Punjab. Let me tell you the real story of ward number 4 Punjab 2020. And this incident took 3 hours. I know it because I was sitting there the entire time. There was this hospital worker, not a doctor, not a nurse, just a simple hospital worker following the instructions that somebody had given him. He stood by my grandfather's bedside with a metal tray full of syringes. By this time, my grandfather's arms looked like watercolor paintings, blue, green, yellow. It was hard for me to believe that these were the same strong arms that had held me every time I fell off the swing at the neighborhood park or had taught me how to ride a bike. And now they'd simply been reduced to watercolor paintings that someone had given up on. Blue pulling into yellow, pulling into purple, pulling into green. Angry veins that had retreated so deep under the skin they refused to be found anymore. They'd learned to hide, just like the excruciating pain. Weeks of chemo, weeks of injections, weeks of the strongest man I knew, remaining steadfast in his resolve, showing me a strength I had previously only read of in books he himself procured for me. And the incident I'm about to narrate to you now forever dulled the charm of superhero novels for me, partly because I grew up, and partly because I was convinced of the fact that no superhero in the world could ever embody the strength that man showed me for 3 hours straight. The worker broke open a needle, tried for a vein, missed. He broke open another needle, tried again, missed. Last try, boss. This is the last one. He kept opening needles, kept trying for veins, kept missing. Grandfather would flinch, go still again, and then that smile would come back. The same charismatic smile I'd known my entire life. I looked at his hands resting by the metal railing. His knuckles had gone white, the only part of him that was allowed to show pain. And by this time, the worker's hands too were shaking. 4th, 5th, 6th. By the 7th, I stopped keeping track, and my grandfather's glinting eyes were now vacant. I remember looking at all the adults in the room, but none of us knew quite what to do, because that is the only language that the hospital worker had been taught. When there's a syringe ordered, you give the syringe. That's the job. That's the protocol. And so the worker kept trying for 3 hours straight. Let that sink in for a moment. I'm about to tell you something now that I never said out loud before. For the longest time, I thought it was my fault. I was 10 years old, I was sitting right there, and I didn't do anything to stop it. It took me almost a decade to realize that it wasn't my fault. But it wasn't the worker's fault either. So what was the problem? The problem is that we've defined healthcare as fighting death instead of supporting life. And under that definition, there is simply no protocol for stop, listen, what matters to you? The problem is that in our country, there is simply no infrastructure for when someone gets diagnosed as terminally ill. Just 3 dots on a medical file. Prognosis guarded, ... And then nothing. Let me show you what those 3 dots actually look like in India right now. They mean that we have fewer than 200 palliative care centers for over 1.4 billion people, and most of them are clustered in a few big cities. So if you belong to a small town like ours, good luck. They mean that medical students spend hundreds of hours learning diagnosis and escalation and 0 hours learning how to have an end-of-life conversation. They mean that the system literally pays hospitals for procedures. So a 5-minute meeting with the family about comfort, not billable. A 4th failed chemo line, billable. And they mean that even the hospitals have these electronic medical record systems that beep and flash and store gigabytes of data. The moment terminal prognosis enters the chart, nothing gets triggered. No palliative care consult, no pain protocol, just whatever the exhausted resident remembers to do at 2 a.m. Now here's what makes me angry, but also gives me hope. We're living in this bizarre moment where we're teaching AI to be more like humans, whereas our humans are becoming more machine-like. We have AI that can detect cancer from a drop of blood. We're investing billions of dollars into teaching machines what it means to suffer. We are genuinely, literally closer to building robots that can fake empathy to having hospital systems in which the humans are taught to say, "We're here for you. What matters to you? We care." And that's what keeps me up at night. What if we're solving the wrong problem? What if instead of teaching machines to care about humans, we should be using these very machines to make humans care more about each other? So here is my solution. It's not about redefining technology. It's about redefining what good hospital means. Because right now, hospitals get evaluated on systems and procedures. But what if we change that? What if we evaluated them on different questions? How many terminally ill patients got to have an honest conversation about their wishes? How many people died where they wanted to die and not where the system defaulted them? How many families felt heard and supported instead of alone? What if we made dignity matter as much as billable codes? What if we tracked it, measured it, and made it impossible to ignore. I'm calling this the empathy infrastructure. Here's what it would look like. Imagine the moment terminal prognosis enters any hospital chart in India. The system wakes up. It's been keeping track of the patterns, the repeated admissions, the failed treatments. And unlike the status quo, it triggers something completely different. Within 24 hours, it schedules an automatic palliative care consult. Not because someone cared, but because the system cared. It also activates pain management protocols with standing orders, so families don't have to beg anymore, and it immediately schedules a family meeting in Hindi, Punjabi, Telugu, Tamil, whatever language the family speaks, because this is important. Note that the AI does not have the conversation, it simply makes sure that the conversation takes place. This isn't rocket science, this is basic conditional logic. I mean, if Blinkit can keep track of when we're running out of toothpaste, why can't a hospital system know when to trigger a conversation about dignity? Those three dots, pehle they meant, oh, we're running out of protocol, we're running out of training, so we're just gonna keep doing stuff to you until something clicks. But I want to change that. I want those three dots to trigger three human questions. Dot one. What do you want? Not what the system wants, not what the protocol wants. What do you want? More time with your family, less pain, more sleep, golgappas. Dot two, what truth are you seeking? Not false jargon, not medical terms. What honest information would you like to know so you can make plans, say goodbye, and spend these last days with your family? And dot three, what would make these days meaningful, not just bearable, meaningful? What legacy do you want to leave behind? There's this quote from The Fault in Our Stars that did not make sense to me the first time I read it, but I can't stop thinking about it right now. There's an infinite collection of numbers between 0 and 1. There's 0.1, 0.12, 0.112, and an infinite collection of others. There's an even bigger set of numbers between 0 and 2, or between 0 and a million. That is to say, some infinities are bigger than other infinities. And Hazel says, I want more numbers than I'm likely to get, but I'm forever thankful for our short infinity. You gave me a forever within the number days, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I'm so grateful. I thought my grandfather lost that day, 3 hours of needles, a system that did not give him the care that he deserved. But now I realize what he was teaching me. That smile he gave me that day was the same smile that had woken me up every single day. He'd already given me my infinity. He'd given me his legacy. And all he was asking for that day was his own infinity back. And I'm forever angry at the system that it denied him his. And so here comes my empathy infrastructure. It's about building a healthcare system that measures infinity by its size and not its length, that honors what our people gave us and lets them choose how their infinity ends. And so, I'm 10 years old again, back in ward number 4. The room still smells of phenol and chai. The aunties are still Googling symptoms. The uncles are still having that debate. Well, what can I say? That's Indian healthcare. That's our ellipsis. But this time, I want those three dots to trigger 3 different questions, 3 different choices as a human being that matters. I promise you that. Thank you.